Bezonomics by Dumaine. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sam, and I want to make self-growth normal. If that's something you're interested in, because people shouldn't have to look this information up, it should just be mainstream knowledge, then make sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Bezonomics. What a book. Seriously, when you take a business philosophy like Jeff Bezos's and turn it into the everything store and invent and wander, and then you have one called Bezonomics, it doesn't just mean that he's doing something right, or he was, because I know that he stepped down, I think a month or two ago as CEO, but he still is like the executive chairman or the owner or something like that. But it can also mean that the 21st century business geeks, internet business geeks, probably look at you the same way that 21st century computer geeks look at Steve Jobs or Tim Cook. Amazon seems to have sort of a growing cult-like following as well. Maybe not the same type or what have you, but his operations and ideas in management seem to trickle down easily into smaller, large corporations like Uber, Spotify, and Netflix. And definitely Airbnb, for sure. So what is it with this book? What's it about? Did I actually like it? How did it stand up? How did it compare to Everything Store and Invent and Wander? Let's talk about it. I'm also going to go over some standout quotes from the book, who I recommend this book to, and what books to maybe check out next. And first, I'm going to go over my thoughts on all the chapters, some things that surprised me and things I learned. The chapter Bezonomics, the intro chapter, I guess, it uncovers how far Amazon has come with statistic and study after statistic and study. Did you know that over 50% of American households have Amazon Prime? I have Amazon Prime, do you? The company in America siphons off 2.1% of household spending, or $1,320 for a family that earns $63,000 a year. It saves the same hassle and expense of driving or taking public transport to a store and purchasing mundane items like diapers or batteries. People buy from Amazon who hate the way it treats its workers. Side note, I heard that recently they're no longer drug testing for marijuana use in drug tests because of people with medical cards, but they are doing just sobriety checks on the job, and I feel like that's so cool. The next chapter is called Richest Man in the World. He's pledged $2 billion for early childhood education and to combat homelessness, yet many in the public perceive him as a ruthless capitalist who, I don't know what this guy said, planned second headquarters in New York City that would starve local schools and services. Never mind that Amazon would have generated tens of billions more in taxes than the breaks were worth, plus brought jobs to the community. These contradictions suggest that on one level, Bezos is indeed human, but on another, they also indicate that he is a force of nature Novo? Moving at warp speed through a vast campus and with such unparalleled resources that contradictions become inevitable. When a person creates one of the most valuable companies in the world and has more money than every other human on earth, their life doesn't lend itself to a tiny storyline. This chapter dives into how the son of a struggling unicyclist and teenage mother became the richest man in the world. My answer, in one word, is simply strategy. Right place, right time, right audience, right everything. You could say it's luck to a degree. Launched a book business right as the internet took off. Surviving the dot-com meltdown, riding the wave of streaming media, and the massive shift in shopping from brick and mortar, retail to online. But he also inherited a love of resourcefulness very, very early on in his life from his grandfather on his farm. A lot of people do compare Jeff Bezos to Elon Musk. Elon Musk, who I admire a lot, has just crashed and burned time after time after time because he just doesn't really seem to have the same grasp on sheer strategy. He reaches for the stars, but he does it in a what comes off, at least, as a very reckless way, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, look at where he is now. The next chapter is called In God We Trust, All Others Must Bring Data. This chapter dives into what Bezos looks for in employees. I will say the story about starting Amazon and leaving D.E. Shaw, the stories about his grandfather's farm, story about packing on tables instead of floors and how that idea came to life, Bezos going to a Montessori school and being too quote-unquote task focused, the story of that persuaded him to not further venture into quantum mechanics. These things have been spoken about in interviews and other books, and when there are so many interviews and other books about it, and this is called Bezonomics, how Amazon is changing our lives and what the greatest companies are learning from it. Like, Brian, the way that you talk about Amazon is breathtaking, and about Jeff Bezos too at some points, but I don't know if we really need this much background on Bezos nowadays when we can find it just about anywhere we look. The next chapter is called the 10,000 Year Man. This is where things took a turn for the much better. The author does have this habit of transitioning from chapter to chapter with total ease, almost like some Netflix or Amazon Prime shows. In this case, how they can transition from episode to episode with the most brilliant, unexpected cliffhangers. He'll end a chapter with something like, while most business leaders think in terms of quarters, or perhaps the next maybe 2 or 3 years, Bezos thinks in terms of centuries. And this added so much cohesion to the book. The next chapter, Cranking the Flywheel. In this chapter, the author very vividly describes the size, structure, and appearances of Amazon's headquarters in Seattle. Then how Amazon is able to keep such low prices and high inventory at the same time while selling like mad. This is a principle called economies of scale. By lowering costs, they increase the number of customers who are visiting the site. This attracts more independent sellers who want to keep selling on the platform and reach the growing traffic, which leads to more revenue, which again leads to economies of scale, which help attract more customers by further lowering prices. Lower prices, more customers, more sellers, and that's the flywheel, and it keeps turning and turning and turning. This actually allows the employees to act autonomously in the sense of, well, all we really need to do is just push the flywheel a bit harder each day. Of course, you need to know and be able to clearly explain how your work at Amazon contributes to this, but the company got the flywheel effect from the concept from a book called Good to Great by author Jim Collins, about what separates good companies from great companies that last the long term. And it helped Amazon survive the economic aftermath of both the dot-com boom and 9/11. Good to Great, I haven't read it yet. I don't know why. I've heard incredible things about it. The author said that this is the business model, the flywheel effect of the future. And literally any company that ignores this new way of doing business does so at its own peril. If I were watching this right now, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I gotta get a Good to Great and check it out this second. The following chapter, Earn Your Trident Every Day. That's something that they say in the Navy. It discusses what's so incredible about Amazon Prime. And the weirdest thing to me is that sometimes when he talks about Amazon and the way it treats customers, demographics, seemingly it's almost like the way that we would treat bugs or animals or something. Like we suck people deeper into the Amazon vortex. He used Amazon vortex, that term, a lot. At some point, the author actually compared one-click buying to nicotine addiction and said, but Amazon wouldn't call it that, which was a little bit kind of disturbing in a sense, because it really does blur the lines a bit between this company really cares about its customers and I have no idea what this company cares about, but here's my money anyway. The next chapter, I never could get behind this title. Sexy Alexa is obviously all about Alexa. It's about voice recognition, which doesn't really seem like it's gone all that far. We still can't really have decent conversations with her. Maybe I myself am just not the best conversationalist when it comes to voice recognition, but we can shop with her, we can make shopping lists with her and then buy everything on the list with her, and we can do it in our kitchen, for goodness sake. My girlfriend and I never use her for anything though, because we're convinced that there's not really that much that we need her for, except checking the weather when we don't really feel like going out and checking it ourselves. For the most part, very, very little of my life really at all revolves around Amazon. If you don't count AWS as Amazon. I mean, Amazon doesn't own the companies that use AWS, which stands for Amazon Web Services, by the way. It fuels a lot of how CRMs work. It doesn't own the companies who use it, like Netflix, Airbnb, Adobe, Apple, Kellogg's, Dow Jones, ESPN, Twitch, BBC. It's a lot of companies, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Amazon doesn't own them. Same thing with Facebook. I could definitely easily live without Facebook, but not Apple or Google. In the chapter, Warehouses That Run in the Dark, maybe after like 2 hours in, and I think this was like an 11-hour audiobook, the audiobook really does talk about how Amazon is changing our lives, the world, and how so many companies do business. Amazon, Amazon, Amazon. It's like that clip of Steve Ballmer from Microsoft just screaming the word developers a million times running across a stage. Developers, developers, developers. They're replacing so many jobs with automation, AI, and just overall technology, from cashiers to warehouse workers to delivery drivers. But as MIT professor Eric Brynjolfsson said, there are so many things humans can do better than machines. The new jobs will be more on the creative side. Humans can do more connecting with people and more thinking. There's no shortage of work in our economy that can only be done by humans. The next chapter is called Dancing with the Devil. Amazon is also allegedly hurting small businesses by putting ceilings on what those businesses can and cannot do. This is a huge concern for a lot of people, which I definitely understand. As the author said, however, small businesses that have an edge, whether it's knowledgeable service or a craft product like farm-made cheese that can't be easily sold at scale on Amazon, those should do just fine, even as Amazon continues to grow and take more oxygen out of the retail environment. Also, trying to get a haircut or a tattoo on Amazon. I work at a car dealership, and I am still surprised every day that Amazon still has not figured out how to directly sell cars. The author is not every now and then that biased, or at least on the side of Amazon. Every now and then he'll drop down a nugget and say, at Amazon, a seller in conflict is guilty until proven guilty. He's quick to mention when people scrutinize the monolith's big business practices. I mean, a retailer making their own products and selling the products as competitors to household brands is something that has been going on forever, like in grocery stores. For example, according to Apple CEO Tim Cook in, I believe it was a CNN interview. But I don't know, using the data of competitors' sales and why people buy the products, having more of that than that competitor data than anyone, especially exponentially more, is like, that's some like Standard Oil stuff right there. Earlier in the review, I guess going over the chapter, The Game of Drones. It's a cool name for a chapter, the Game of Drones. Earlier in the review, I thought that, you know, this book is basically like a regurgitation of what it seems like we've all known for a while at this point. But then he actually started talking about how Amazon is actually changing our lives. The further I got into the book, the more something I heard once had come to mind. I believe I heard from the book The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly. It's an amazing book about the 12 forces that are creating and shaping our future. What I heard was that the future is already here. It's just in distribution, which is really, really insane to think about. For example, by drones and autonomous cars. It makes me think that this quote has always been true, from fire to electricity to the internet. The author also described Amazon's work ahead with becoming what's called a hybrid retailer, being both online and brick and mortar. The next chapter is called Amazon Proofing Your Business. This is probably the most valuable chapter for anyone who is looking to start or has already started a retail store of any kind. Or even not a retail store, like even a restaurant or a barber shop. If you can't do what Amazon does, and not really anyone can do what Amazon does, then you have to separate yourself from them in other ways and exploit those ways. Amazon separates itself from other companies in 3 ways that just happen to be of extreme importance in today's world. Fast delivery, low prices, and a variety of products. You have to create an amazing in-store experience that digitally emerges with an amazing online experience. You have to offer a curated selection of exclusive products. You have to heavily invest in technology, including mastering social media. And you have to double down on a social mission that makes customers feel good about buying from you. These are the 4 things that you need to do. Anyone who keeps up with an Amazonian world, and this is an Amazonian world, let's face it, it's just, you just gotta go from what's the first stage of the grieving process? You need to go from that to just acceptance. And just anyone who keeps up with an Amazonian world needs to focus on 2 or more of these things for sure. There is so much that goes into large, successful like retailing. This book does do a fantastic job at illuminating what all that really is. The last chapter, Amazon Unbound, just so you know, in case you haven't already, Amazon is moving into health and advertising and also finance. The author also dropped his fantastic analysis on how Amazon held up to the scrutiny of not paying their wage at a minimum of $15 an hour. So what did they do? They raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour. And there are actually economic reasons for this, which is interesting. In this day and age, and I feel like I use the words in this day and age like 19 times in every book review recently, you just can't get away with not paying your employees this much. More and more businesses are beginning to do this every day, especially larger ones. Amazon was just like, we're deciding that we're gonna be the first company to do this. At least the first giant company. Target decided it wasn't a bad idea for them to just agree with Bernie Sanders. Sometimes all you need to do is listen to people and just do what they suggest. And sometimes it's really not that hard. In conclusion, I'll say this. Bezonomics is very clear with laying out how we can learn from Amazon and what it's done to scale in our time and how it's used its own influence to grow its own influence. So it would be very useful to have a book like this, but it would be really cool to also have one about Facebook and Apple and Google for sure as well. And over time, maybe books like this about like Tesla and Walmart and Microsoft and other megalithic companies of the future. But if you guys know any books like that fit the type of description that I laid out here, please let me know. Quotes. Referring to children and screen use, on a scale between candy and crack cocaine, it's closer to crack cocaine. The more we know we can buy, the more we buy. Jeff Bezos talking about failing. I have made billions of dollars in failures at Amazon. Literally billions. It's almost as if Amazon's software knows what customers will order before they order it. Those who understand and can execute such systems will be the big wealth creators of the future. Bezos referring to usually buying one category of item and more likely starting to buy other categories as well after signing up for Prime. Every time we win a Golden Globe Award, we sell more shoes. With AI voice recognition, we've gone from the age of the biplane to the age of the jet plane. Part of the luxury experience is how a shopper feels when purchasing an item, and frankly, how great can anyone feel buying a luxury watch on the same site where a can of tennis balls can be bought for $2.99? Direction 1. I recommend this book to anyone who really wants to learn more about what Amazon is doing that no one else is. Other Amazon books I did enjoy for sure, but I didn't find them as illuminating from both an operational and comprehensive standpoint. Direction 2. What I was saying before about a book like this, but about Facebook or Apple or Google, there's actually a book about all 4 of these companies and what they have in common. I haven't come up with a list of my favorite 5 books ever, but it's definitely in there. It's probably like 4 or 3. It's called The 4 by Scott Galloway. If you've checked out The 4 and another book called The Everything Store by Brad Stone, which is basically like it's kind of like an Amazon biography. The Everything Store is referenced a number of times during Bezonomics. I would check out Invent and Wander by Bezos himself and the legendary biographer Walter Isaacson. Bezonomics by Brian Dumaine. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books that I mentioned in this video if you want to check those out too. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I don't get why people watch this far into my videos and they don't subscribe. This has to be like the longest review I've done in a while, but if you have subscribed and you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification whenever I drop new videos, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere and I will see you then.